Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Why am I making that boom, boom, boom sound? I don't know. Hi, I'm Garrett Brown. This is Tango, and welcome to the Tango instructional video. Tango is a little crane on the Steadicam, in case you haven't seen this before. Instead of just a camera on the end of the arm, we now have a little spar capable of elevating, traversing, panning, tilting, and operating is just what we're used to, good old Steadicam operating, mimicked at the other end by mechanical means. Stand by, I think you'll enjoy this. Tango comes in two cases, the spar and the long stuff in here, the heavy stuff in a good wheeled case. You get 10 one-pound weights, 4 small one-pound weights, you'll see why there's a difference, auxiliary monitor, the slave stage, the all-important docking mount, a long coax, a cable for the auxiliary monitor, and some hardware, big screws and little screws. In the long case, the gimbal yoke, slave gimbal, slave post, the mysterious tie rods, all will become clear, and the all-important main central spar. So let's get started. Mount the docking mount. The docking mount has 2 prongs to accept the main spar on either side of the gimbal. This is the central Tango spar. Notice that the gimbal is entirely inside the 2 mounting prongs. Put in the pins right away, because when the loads are uneven at either end, the pins stop the spar from coming out of the docking mount. Our next step is going to be picking a length, and this is as short as the Tango gets. And it's still quite useful. It will still get you way below low mode and way above high mode. If you have a camera between 5 and 10 pounds, you can go with a medium length. That's the white line showing. See how the line mates up with this little tick mark, right? Let's go for the full extension. See how the line breaks into the red here? Can you see that? Line the yellow line up with the tick line, lock the kip lock. The spar has 2 fish mouths, we call them. Very large openings, one at this end, one at this end. And their purpose is so that you can thread almost any size connector down the center of the spar, bypassing the gimbal. In this instance, we're going to use a thin BNC coax, and because of the camera we've chosen, the coax does HD SDI and phantom power for the camera. Always start at the slave end, because you want to clear the joint between the interior post and the exterior. It's better to go in this direction. Some cables are stiff enough that you can just push it straight through. This coax is a little limp, so here's a trick. Pull this pin. That lets the docking mount tilt up at an angle. You can also, if you're working on a set where there's no room and you're going to lunch, you can put the whole Tango up at an angle. Now this connector should be showing up down here. Boom. Level them out, stick the pin back in. All right, let's dock the slave gimbal. The slave gimbal pushes into this end. There's a registration mark that lets it go in only in the right direction, and this blue ring locks it down. Screw the slave spar into the Merlin stage. It's a fine thread, so be sure you're not cross-threaded, right? Spin it in until it's tight. Dock the slave spar in the slave gimbal. This is the Steadicam. Spectacularly light, a lens and chip. It can be either a PL mount or a professional C mount. It comes equipped with rods for focus pulling, and in the case of these Kawa lenses, gears for focus pulling. I know that the center of gravity of this whole rig approximately is this point. That point should be adjacent to the letter H. Put the H over that point and find the closest hole available, the usual practice for you Merlin aficionados, and screw on the plate tightly. This is the rear of the stage, and this monitor bracket is at the front of the stage, so that's the direction it goes. Dock the camera on it the same way you would dock a Merlin. Currently, Tango works with either the Archer 2 sled or the stock Zephyr sled. In both cases, however, the normal yoke has to be removed. Unscrew the blue ring, and the sled is ready to be docked on the Tango spar. The yoke goes into the master end of the spar and is screwed in. At some point, you have to rotate until the wing is drawn into the notch. Can you see that? And continue turning until it's tight. By the way, you'll notice that I did one thing in particular with the Archer sled. Rotate the nose box to the rear. This keeps it out of the way of the tie rods. You'll understand why. Line it up, but put it backwards to your normal operation. All right, now we go over to the slave side, and let's add weights to the slave side. These narrow weights go on the top. Notice that we are now top heavy. And since there are no tie rods engaged at this point, we're able to exactly determine balance for the slave side. The first thing that I want to do is get it not top heavy. So loosen the gimbal, drop the spar, keep doing it until you get it approximately neutral. Let's fix our fore and aft balance here. I'm back heavy, see that? I slide to the front, closer, closer. And now I'm able to adjust the trim ring, wrong direction, to get exactly balanced fore and aft. See it? I'm very slightly top heavy. I'm going to drop down very slightly. Close enough. Now, side to side, slightly off. Adjust the trim ring. Boom. That's entirely close enough because, of course, when we add cables, it's going to have an effect on it. But what you want is the slave spar essentially balanced top to bottom. Understand how this works? It's before any tie rods, before any influences on this, I'm able to completely neutrally balance the slave stage. The beauty of that is now the master side just becomes an ordinary Steadicam. If you balance it for ordinary type operation, you're in. You don't have to do anything further with the slave side balance. This gimbal lets you tell which side is the heaviest because that's the side that is weighing down. It's easy to tell. And it's a good idea to build up the payloads on both sides alternately so that you don't have one side fully loaded and the other one fully light. Let's add the battery on the master side. And now let's add the final payload on the master side. So the simplest payload is a dovetail plate and a number of the weights depending on what you guess your payload needs to be in order to make this seesaw work in balance with the gimbal where you want it. There is a tapped hole on one side of each of these weights and a 1/4-20 screw sticking out the other side. So they stack up one on top of the other, right? So this is the equivalent of a 10-pound top weight and also supplies a considerable amount of inertia. In our particular case, we have the CCU unit for the Steadicam. It's like a cooking show. I've pre-mounted this on a dovetail plate. And I like putting one of the 1-pound weights first on the plate and then dock the Steadicam on the top of the 1-pound weight. And the reason is that gives you a little gap to take up and wind your excess cables on. And that's always a problem with these things, is where do all the cables go? So here's a case now, if you add that little weight, you get a little more mass, and you have this wonderful gap that you can wrap cables in. So let's point the intelligent end of the CCU toward us when we're operating, so the controls are there. And let's point all the connectors toward the massive connectors that are at the back of the normal stage. Remember, we flipped the stage around, right? So we are now approaching a situation where we have almost full payload, right? We still seem to be a bit heavy on the master side, so I'm going to slide this gimbal slightly just to make a guess where that will be. Now we can independently balance the master sled. It's clearly terribly bottom heavy. Let's fix that. Notice how I put my hand above the gimbal? That helps control the gimbal position and not let it drop. I'm guessing we'll go all the way down here. Now the master side balances just like an ordinary Steadicam. I'd like it slightly bottom heavy. That seems a little too bottom heavy. Let's bring up the bottom of the spar and lighten that a little bit. This is standard Steadicam practice. Okay. We're freely gimbaled in this axis, but the spar is rubbing on the docking stand in this axis, so you can't really rely on this for trim. So calibrate two bubbles to make sure they're read identically. Put one of them on the master side right at this part of the gimbal, crossways. Put one on the slave side, same thing. This one is almost level. We have to unlock and turn the small diameter spar until it gets level. Very close, close enough for government work. Tighten the spar because we don't want that to shift. Notice that I have these bitter ends of my coax just looped over this kip lock here just to keep them out of the way until we need them later. In our supplied collection of screws, you've got 4 large diameter ones and 6 smaller diameter, slightly longer ones. The small ones are used to mount the tie rods. This is the tie rod assembly. This is used to connect the master and the slave side together in a second axis. We're going to add this axis and make them follow each other this way. Now one of these pulley trees, which are what these are called at either end, is larger in diameter. That's the one on the Archer sled. Goes right there. I'm going to just set it down here for the moment and add 3 of these screws. And the screws go in 3 holes in the tree that go right through to the gimbal. Second one is right here. Third one is its opposite. Now we extend the tree the same markings as the main spar. I'll tilt this so you can see it. See the yellow line? Here's the white line, right? And here is the maximum extension just before it turns red, same as the main spar. See that? See, it drops right in on the slave gimbal. Same 3 screws. We now want to be sure that we're level in this direction, adjusting side-to-side balance. I want to be sure that when I'm level on the master side, well, that strikes me I could be a little more bottom heavy, yeah? Notice the hand that stops it from dropping. Better. Because the trees and the tie rods have a little bit of weight, so I'm adjusting bottom heaviness, boom. Just like a normal Steadicam. Now I'm connected in 2 axes. But even right now, it looks like to my eye that this vertical isn't the same as this vertical. That means the tie rods aren't long enough. Better. Well, let's not trust our eye. Let's put some levels up and see how that looks. So let's find somewhere level on the rig. Could be right there. That's good. Right at the front end of the docking mount. Now it helps actually to have a friend stand here and keep this side level. Any volunteers? Colin, if you can hold that and make sure that stays level. Keep that bubble in. Okay, so when you're level on that side? Level. We're very close. Adjust the tie rod length until the bubble is spot on, and then strongly lock the tie rods. We are connected in 2 axes. We are not connected in pan, and that's the next step. Pan is connected by means of a high-tech, well, it's a string, really. This is Vectran, very low stretch stuff. So we want to run the line all the way from the pan pulley on the slave side to the pan pulley on the master side. There are little pulley grooves hidden here and here, all right? And in order to do that, the line has to roll over these turning pulleys to get to that position. So the best thing to do is to come through the center of the tie rods and just hook the loop onto this lock on the tie rods. Now run over this pulley, around this one. Make sure you actually get the line in the groove. Right. Over this pulley. Continuing, don't forget to go under this monitor mount on the tie rods. If you go over it, you'll have to do it over again. Around this pulley, and this one. Make sure you're in the groove. Around this one. Okay, now, this hook hooks onto this loop, and you're connected. We're too loose, but we're connected. Let's work this line over to where we want to be. Right about there. That's a convenient spot to be. Now I want to tension this loop. Tensioning the loop means pulling one side of it and sliding the connector. This is all going to take place in the center here, so let's move into position. Pull it tight, slide the connector. Boom. The slave camera isn't pointed in the same direction as the master sled. The solution is to, and you can fix this anytime while you're operating, by pinching the line to the tie rod. I can turn left if I pinch the far one. I can turn right if I pinch the near one, and I've immobilized the camera and allowed myself to alter the angle of the spar so they line up, okay? As soon as they line up, you're in position to pan as rapidly as you like. No servo motor on earth can do a whip pan like this. They're simply not fast enough. And we learned the hard way, they're not quiet enough, or light enough, or cheap enough, which is why we went with this mechanical solution, right? All three axes are now connected. Whatever you do with the master is mimicked by the slave spar. So the very simplest cable wrap is one that just goes from a zip tie at the yoke immediately down to the camera in one open loop. This is the top view of the yoke, in effect, right? I'm going to zip tie right onto here. So pick the spot on the yoke that's more or less aimed already in the right direction. And I attach to the BNC connector on the back of the Steadicam. The beautiful thing about this camera is that its power is phantom power from the rig. So from this angle you can see I can pan way beyond 180 in both directions and not run out of cable. On the slave side I like coming from the back. On the master side I like coming from the front. So we'll zip tie here and take one loop up to the CCU. I like something like this. Pick a feature on the rig and zip tie to it. Now once again we have tremendous freedom to pan. Check that. Yep. No worries. So now hooking up the remaining cables. Here's power for the Steadicam. Output of the CCU to the HDSDI plug. Another short coax connects the HDSDI out to the monitor. If your camera is bottom heavy on the slave side, you need to install these idler pulleys so that the vibration is minimized. And if it were bottom heavy, you would see a little play, and these idler pulleys eliminate it. For the Archer rig, one is wider than the other. See that? Pick the widest one for the Archer. The wheels go upright, highest. And the last move you make is push it up with your finger and tighten it. Notice this little aperture here. This is useful sometimes for tying cables if you have a tough cable lead. You can run your cables through this gap, tie it here, and then lead it up to the camera. That keeps your cables out of trouble with the line. Notice that these idlers also have keepers that help keep the cable on this top pulley even during violent maneuvers. Again, the last thing you do, push it up, tighten it. This is the gimbal yoke that holds the rig, that flies it on the arm, okay? It can be mounted either what we call laughingly normal, or it can be mounted insultingly goofy. I'll spin around so you can see this. The gimbal yoke attaches to the actual gimbal with 4 screws, the screws with the large diameters. I can see this monitor. That's what we're used to. We're used to looking at a monitor in this place. It helps you walk around, it helps your navigation. The only thing I can't see while I'm looking at this monitor is where my camera is. And when you're flying around an object that weighs a few pounds at high speed, as you'll see, the very last thing you want to do is take your eyes off that if it's close to the scenery or the antique props or the very expensive actors who you do not want to clock with this as if it was a Louisville Slugger. It's extremely advantageous to have a couple, 1 or more additional monitoring positions. And with the rig you get 2 4.3-inch standard def monitors, right? They can be mounted either here with a simple thumb screw or here in this angle. It does slightly irritate me that this monitor rolls when I tilt, but many of my colleagues with Tango say they get used to it right away and still love it. I like a monitor position here. Notice the bracket is built in, ready up for the monitor in this position, which means that tilted at that angle, you can see it at almost all positions. Just remember, if you want the monitor here on this bracket, balance it in right away when you're balancing the slave stage. The power in the video out is led through the fish mouths with a wrap just like this. Pops out here, can be led directly down to the stage and right to the monitor. Keep in mind that if you're in a high def job, and these are standard def monitors, you need a down converter. There's no down converter on the Archer II or the Zephyr. So we use, for example, something like the decimator, just Velcro to the monitor, use little 1-foot coaxes to connect it to the bottom stage, and can even be powered locally from the bottom stage. One additional monitor position that I quite like is done right here. One thing we haven't done is place the central gimbal so the rig is perfectly in balance end to end. Easiest way to do that, as we know from Steadicam, is to put it, quote, on the pin. Take the keepers off of the gimbal, hold this handle with one hand, well, now it appears that we're not in the center of balance. Pop the gimbal open, slide the gimbal, getting close. Let it sit for a moment, see if it begins to drop. Too far. Good. Don't forget to lock it. So now, on the pin, we begin to see what this baby is all about. It's a little crane. The right hand has 2 new moves for Steadicam operators, traverse and elevate, done with a strong grip. The left hand does what we're used to, panning, tilting. Eyes closed, it's just a Steadicam. It feels exactly like you're used to, right? It trims like you're used to. Trimming the master trims the whole rig, right? Side to side, fore and aft. Bottom heaviness should be just what you're used to, right? Except now you can elevate. You've got to be careful what you get into when you go way up high on this baby. But let's see how it looks on an arm. So you pick it up like an ordinary Steadicam. Arm post in the hole. Hold here, fly it out of the stand. Okay? Putting it all together, you've got tilting, panning, elevating, traversing. Now let's go see a couple of exercises that are the essentials for tango. They're sort of like the line exercises to regular Steadicam. So we're going to look at a few exercises, and if you master these, that's the basis for being skillful with tango. Look at this like one of those golf tapes where you just watch the swing over and over again, and then try it yourself, and then go back and watch it again. Watch the body language, watch the hands, watch how it's done. This is the home position. It's a good one to be in because the spar doesn't hit the arm. Even when you boom up, and notice how close the rig is to me. And you come in 2 turns further in than your normal trim. Because this arm is normally over here. When it's here, that helps it drive toward you a little bit and actually keeps the arm behaving properly. Of course, you can push away. You can push away for panning. But if you're not panning, stay as tight as you can to the rig. The first exercise is elevating, which is entirely done with this hand. Notice the other hand almost has nothing to do. So start as low as you can. Don't have the spar any more than a 45-degree angle down. Tilt up. And as you elevate up, tilt down. So watch this left hand. It only moves up and down about 6 or 8 inches. If I move them both together, I get no elevation. Because this is about a 5-to-1 ratio, 4 or 5 to 1. So if I leave this in place, that's how I get the maximum amount of elevation. And when I run out of spar, remember I don't want to be any more than 45 degrees, then do it with the arm. The tango back pans by itself. And this is the other exercise, is traversing. Just watch the body language of this. And don't forget to practice your whip pans. They're just like normal Steadicam. Since you're on foot, don't hesitate to move around while you're doing these moves. That's the missing ingredient in most crane shots. To move. You can rise and fall nearly on a straight line. If you traverse sideways and back, keep the camera going straight up and down. It helps to have a little visual reference, and then it isn't difficult to do. It helps if you go. Now here is tango in the short mode. You just saw it long. Here it is in the shortest mode for the heaviest camera payloads. You can still get from ankle height to above the head. It's super low mode to high mode, which is extremely useful, even with heavier cameras. And the total payload is 50.5 pounds, as you see it here. And the payload is 8 pounds of the red Epic with a SSD card with an Arri focus motor. On the top is 5 pounds of weights, and I'm guessing a ½ pound Arri focus receiver. On this end, 12 pounds of weights, my little video DA in case we wanted to feed extra monitors. And on the bottom, 2 additional weights in the center and 2 batteries. And this sled is the same size as you saw it for the long rig. That is to say, lots of extra column above the gimbal. The gimbal is just barely above its maximum down position, and a bit of extension for the lower part of the sled. But the result is a rig that you, once again, balance as if you were just Steadicam operating, trim as if it's a Steadicam. So let's look at the cabling setup here, all right? In this particular case, we needed a P-tap connection to run the array receiver. The ideal arrangement would be a splitter so that the same power cable runs both. And this is by way of illustrating that you can run additional cables along the tie rods, run down close to the posts, such as to the monitor rods, right? And again, a tremendous panning range. Now let's look at the slave side. Here is the red Epic power cable and HD SDI. On the slave side, I like running behind and up to the yoke, and again, a tremendous panning range. The motor cable from the array motor to the amp runs up the fish mouths in the slave side, which means that it's completely out of the way for any panning maneuvers. It pans with the rig. So that's the motor connection, and power is the aforementioned P-tap. And notice that I run once again down to the tie rod and a little loop keeping it close to the center. So in both cases, we're in no trouble for panning maneuvers that you might need. Now let's have a look at the vertical range of the Tango in short mode, okay? Thanks, John. So, you've got to be really careful indoors because we do stick up a bit. But look, we're down, even at my height, in ankle territory, and I can't get anywhere near my top range here. We'll have to go outside for that before I wreck something. So here's the Tango in short, heavy camera mode, 8 pounds of red Epic, counterweights. The total weighs 51 pounds. High mode, straight through to super low mode. And all the other maneuverability that you get with Tango intact at 50 pounds, not bad. High mode, low mode. I must get out of that habit of going whoosh. Of course, it's super important in heavy mode that you don't hit expensive persons or furniture with the red Epic.